The IRS is accused of targeting conservative groups, and it's really caused a lot of drama on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, Jessica Yellen reports this morning on what the White House is doing to put out the flames.
Sticking to his pre-crisis schedule, President Obama hit the road, visiting a manufacturing plant.
Others may get distracted by chasing every fleeting issue that passes by, but the middle class will always be my #1 focus. Hi.
And a Baltimore elementary school.
You see me on TV?
An apparent effort to show the controversies in Washington aren't changing his agenda. But the outcry on Capitol Hill is only growing. The first hearing over the IRS scandal took place Friday.
Why did the IRS repeatedly target the American people and then keep that fact covered up for so long?
It's the IRS targeting gate.
Every tweet from your Twitter account.
This is very chilling for the American people.
I promise the American people this investigation has just begun. Hearing adjourned.
The White House attempted to contain the fallout, pressing the resignation of the IRS chief.
It's important to institute new leadership that can help restore confidence going forward.
To rebut attacks over the Benghazi talking points, officials here released 100 pages over internal emails, while the president called on Congress to step up funding for embassy security.
And better secure our diplomatic posts around the world.
Turning to the wave of sexual assault cases hitting the military, the president made a show of meeting with Pentagon brass to talk solutions. And to quiet press outrage over the seizure of reporter phone records in a leaks investigation, new support for a media shield law.
We need to provide the protections to the media that this legislation would do.
How effective were these efforts at damage control? The jury's still out.
That brings us to our next guest. Alexandra Eaker is a tax attorney who knows a great deal about the IRS, specializing in 501(c) and 501(c) and 4Cs, the charitable organizations at the root of this issue. Good morning to you, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this is certainly an issue in your experience that is nothing new for the IRS. Is that right?
No, the IRS has a long history of these types of actions. Actually, in the 1960s, Martin Luther King Jr. Was specifically targeted by the IRS and aggressively audited. So was his charitable organization, as was the Ku Klux Klan and the Black Panthers. So it was, in the 60s, it was more of a broad-reaching impact.
So there's a history of this kind of...
Yes.
Already some distrust with the IRS for taxpayers, for businesses. What kind of collateral damage do you think we'll see going forward?
I think there will absolutely be internal reform that results from this. In 1997, there was a big scandal involving the White House and the IRS. It was actually the White House Travel Department and a related airline. However, that's what prompted the 1997 reform and a more customer service friendly IRS focused on giving taxpayers more service, more rights, and less on enforcement.
Let's talk about the charitable organizations. You've done a lot of work with those organizations. Why are they so hard to deal with? Why does the IRS struggle with 501(c) and 4Cs?
Well, especially 501(c), 501(c). After the Citizens United case came down from the Supreme Court, that opened the door for tax-free spending, all in secret. There's no way to see who the donors are in a super PAC or in any of those types of political organizations after the Citizens United case. So in the 2012 election, the IRS, I would imagine, wanted to take a strong look at these organizations because there is no other way to see what was going on within the 501(c)(4)s.
They are politically slanted, though. It is.
Yes.
To say that it's not political, I think would be not to tell the truth. Does that seem to be the case?
It seems like that's the way the story is unfolding. That it is a political thing. I've also read reports in the news where it was just a few agents. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, if it was overall policy, but it does seem to be that there may have been a few bad apple employees.
Which also brings me to another point. Those agents in Cincinnati, Ohio was a key battleground state in the election, which brings up a whole new set of questions. Let's talk about reform. You talk about tax reform. You mentioned it. What would tax reform look like? What would be some of the things that they talk about flat tax during the 2012 presidential election? Is that what we're looking at? And if it would be a flat tax, what would that mean for you and I as taxpayers?
I really can't speak on whether or not it would be a flat tax or a graduated tax. That's for Congress to decide. I can say as far as reforms go, it's interesting. In 1997, when the IRS became more friendlier and customer service driven, as a result of Congress forcing them to be, the IRS actually requested that one of the 10 deadly sins for an IRS employee to commit would be to, on their own, audit an organization or an individual without cause. Congress, interestingly, did not include that in the final legislation.
Why was that?
I don't know.
Okay. So what would you see going forward if you had a crystal ball?
I think moving forward that because that has previously been discussed in the Senate and in Congress, that would be enacted in future legislation, especially given the nature of the scandal. An IRS employee should be held accountable if they are auditing an individual or an organization without cause, without their superior's authorization.
Because we're held accountable. Businesses are held accountable. If they don't, cross their T's and dot their I's, the IRS comes after them. So
Correct.
they should be held accountable.
Yes.
Yeah, it seems as if a fair deal there. Does this bother you? I mean, you had said it's actually exciting for tax attorneys.
It is.
But what is it? I mean, for folks in your business, how do you feel? How is it reacting? Are the shockwaves huge on this?
I wouldn't say the shockwaves are so huge on this. I feel like the shockwaves are probably bigger in Capitol Hill on this, because this, I don't think, is something that most of the American people are aware of. I think it's a real shame. I do. I think it's a real shame, and I think that it, obviously is going to tarnish an organization that's very important to all of us as Americans.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alexandra Eaker, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, appreciate your insight and some historical perspective on this. All right, it is 9:38. Let's get over to Brooke. She is outdoors. It is a beautiful morning. Hello to you.
I'm very happy. I had a cupcake.
We're all very happy that you are happy.
Now I'll be nicer to you.
Thank you.
All right, it is a beautiful day out here. It is